scary stories. Does Taiwan have any scary stories? Ghost stories, murder, mystery, scary stories. In the US, we have many scary stories. Today, I will read you a scary story, and then I'll explain what it means. Okay? So this story is called Burning Feet. So Burning Feet is this. Burning Feet.
没关系，听不懂，放心了。有什么好恐怖的 ？OK， 没有水。
Burning Feet.
帮他翻译。
Okay, so burning feet. What is burning? Burning, like hot, hot. Oh. So this means your feet are on fire. So burning feet. And the characters, their names are the hunter, so the hunter, the hunter, Defago, and the Wendigo. And this is a Native American story. What are Native Americans? Indians. Do you guys know Indians? Okay, so this is a Native American story. The Wendigo is a monster that Native Americans believe exists. So this is a monster. The Wendigo is a Native American monster. And this is a story that they believe. Okay. So I'll read it first, and then I'll explain. Otherwise, you won't understand. Okay? So listen carefully, and then I'll explain, okay? Once, there was a wealthy man who liked to hunt. And he decided that he was going to go hunting in Canada. Where he decided that he would go was a desolate and isolated part of northern Canada that few people ever went to, and even fewer people went to for hunting. So there's a hunter that has a gun. He's going to Canada. Where's Canada? Canada. Canada. He's going to Canada to go hunting. But he's going very, very far north. In northern Canada, there's nobody. Nobody lives there. So there's nobody there. So he's going to northern Canada to go hunting. After he arrived to the spot where he wanted to begin his hunt, he went to the trading post and asked around for someone who would be willing to work as his guide. After all, he knew that it would be unwise for him to travel in such a remote part of the country when he was unfamiliar with his surroundings. But no one was willing to take the job, saying that it would be far too dangerous to go hunting in that area. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, and who helped me with this? Do you help? Ask for it? Thank you, thank you. Okay. So, he wants to go to northern Canada, but he doesn't know how to go. So he needs to ask somebody to help him. He asked and asked and asked and asked. Nobody wanted to go. They said it's too dangerous. Too dangerous. Maybe there's lots of bears. Bears, you know?
熊
Yeah, bears. Or wolves.
moose
Wolves. So it was too dangerous. Finally, he was put in touch with a Native American man named Defago, who might agree to take him out and act as his guide. So Defago is going to help him. He is a Native American, an Indian, and he will help him find the way. So the hunter went to Defago, and after speaking with him, was impressed by how much he seemed to know about trapping, Indian lore, and how to survive in the wilderness. So Defago, he's pretty cool. He can hunt, he can trap, he can speak other languages, and he knows about Indian stories. He knows about Indian stories. The hunter asked him if he would be willing to work as a guide, and Defago agreed, saying that he needed the money. So Defago, the Native American, he needed money. So he agreed to go with the hunter. Setting out, they decided that they will paddle down the river until they reached a certain spot, and from there the two of them would go by foot. When they finally reached the place that Defago had decided that they would camp, they set up their tents near Frozen Lake. When they were done, the hunter looked around at their surroundings and thought how peaceful everything looked with a thick blanket of snow covering it all. So they're at a lake. What's a lake? A lake. Lake. So this is a lake. Okay, so a lake. So maybe like this. A lake. And it's water. So this is a lake, a big amount of water. So look back there where there's that boat. That's a lake. Okay? This one in the back there. That's a lake, a big body of water. Not an ocean. It's a lake. So they're at a lake and it's very cold. It's very cold. The lake is ice. Ice. So it's very cold. So they put their tents. So a tent, this is a tent. Tent. You can sleep inside the tent. And it's like this. So this is a tent. And they sleep in the tent. So they're by a lake. For the next 3 days, they hunted all over the area, but they weren't able to catch anything. So for 3 days, they hunted, but nothing. There was nothing. No animals. And as they were running out of food, Defago showed the hunter how to break through the ice on the lake and catch fish. They caught several and were able to make sure that they had something to eat. The hunter became more and more glad that he had chosen Defago as his guide, because the man was proving that he knew just as much about surviving in the wilderness as he claimed when the two of them had met. And the hunter also knew that if it hadn't been for his guide, he would have starved long before he was able to make it back to the trading post. So they're hunting, and then there's no animals, nothing to eat. So they're very hungry. So they go to the lake and they break the ice and go fishing, ice fishing. So they can stay longer, otherwise they would be too hungry. On the 3rd night of their trip, a storm came in, and the wind was terribly fierce. So the wind, what's the wind? So big wind, and maybe lightning, and rain, right?
一直小毛小
As they lay inside their tent, they listened to the wind howling and tearing through the trees, making them whip back and forth. So here's a tree. What's a tree?
树
So here's a tree and the wind, and they can hear it outside their tent. After a while, the hunter decided that he wanted to see what was happening, and he opened the flap of the tent, but what he saw frightened him. So he hears the wind, and it sounds very loud, but when he opens the tent and looks out, nothing. No wind. What is the noise? Even though the two of them had been listening to the wind, and they knew it should be raging on the other side of their tent, when he looked out, the hunter saw that there was no winds moving around them. Nothing around them was stirring, not even the trees. The trees were like this, no wind. They heard the wind howling, they could hear it, but they saw nothing, no winds. As the two of them continued to listen, it sounded to them like the wind was calling Defago's name. Defago, the wind called. Defago. So the person's name, Defago, when he listened, the wind, Defago, Defago. Somebody was calling his name. And he thought, oh, I must be losing my mind. Crazy, right? There's no way that the wind could actually be calling my name. So he closed the tent and went back inside and turned around. And he saw then that Defago was scared, very scared. What's wrong? So the hunter is asking, what's wrong? Defago said, it's nothing. Really, the wind is just messing with our minds, just playing tricks on us. As the night went on, the wind continued to call Defago's name, and it became harder for him to try to explain away that there was no way that they didn't hear what was being said. And all the while, Defago became more tense and more scared. So the wind keeps calling Defago, Defago, calling his name. But they don't know why, and they don't know who. After a long time, so this is nighttime, so it's very dark, and they hear this and they become scared. After a long time, Defago became panicked, and he jumped up, and he was trembling as he pulled back the flap of the tent, and the hunter grabbed his arm. So Defago, he got up, and he started to leave outside the tent. But the hunter grabbed his arm. He said, "What are you doing? You can't leave me here alone. How will I survive?" So if Defago leaves, the hunter will be lost. He doesn't know where to go. Suddenly, there was an enormous roar from the wind coming across the lake. The trees began to genuinely shake for the first time that night, and the campfire threatened to go out. There was a great rushing noise as something flew over the tent, and it was nearly pulled off the ground. So the trees start to shake. The trees start to shake, and the wind comes up, and they see something fly over them. And the campfire, their light, so that here's like a fire, it's gone, and it's dark. Defago was shaking with fear as he pulled away from the hunter, and he started to run away. So Defago ran away. The hunter watched him as he ran until his guide was swallowed by the darkness. And all the while he could hear Defago crying out, "Oh, my feet! My feet are burning!" Defago ran, and he screamed, "Oh, my feet burn!" And he ran away. So it's just the hunter in the tent and nobody. Defago is gone. The next morning, the hunter got up and followed the tracks that Defago had left in the snow. So he got up in the morning, and it's sunshine and bright, and he saw in the snow, what's snow? Snow. Very cold. So on the ground is snow. And he could see Defago's footprints. They reached out to the middle of the lake before they disappeared. So he saw them, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Like something had picked him up and carried him. So he couldn't find Defago. And it concerned him as well that it had appeared that the footprints that Defago had left behind had become longer the farther away from the tent that they had become. It was almost as if something had been helping him to get away. And whatever it was had been dragging him. So something had grabbed him and was dragging him. So he saw the footprints. The footprints got longer and longer and longer, and then gone. So something had grabbed him and dragged him away and then picked him up. Since there was no hole that would suggest that he had fallen in, and it had looked like something may have been dragging him along, the hunter wondered if something had grabbed hold of Defago and flew off with him. So something had grabbed Defago and flew off. But he knew that was impossible. How could this happen? But then again, he heard, "Oh, my feet are burning." So he heard Defago's voice, but he couldn't find him, couldn't see him. So the hunter looked around, trying to find where the sound might have been coming from, but he couldn't see anything. He wanted to cry out, to try and find out where Defago was, and if he was all right, but he was too afraid. So the hunter wanted to go find Defago, but he was scared because he saw those tracks became longer and longer, and then they were gone. So the hunter went home. He went back. He forgot about Defago. Weeks later, so 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, he got back home and he started to look for Defago there. So he went back to where he had met Defago. And he looked everywhere for him. He asked people, "Oh, have you seen Defago? Have you seen Defago?" They said, "No." He told some of the people what they had happened on the night that Defago had disappeared, but no one could explain what happened. Nobody knew. What? Defago? I don't know. So nobody knew. But then, an old man, hunchback, old man, pulled the hunter aside, just as he was starting to believe that he would never get any answers. "Could it have been a Wendigo?" the old man asked. "What's that?" "It comes with the wind," the old man said. "It calls your name and tries to trick you. Once it is able to get a hold of you, it drags you along at a great speed until your feet burn off." So something grabs people. So there's a wind, and then it calls your name, "Come here, come here." And you look for it, and it comes behind you and grabs you and drags you away. Then it carries you off into the sky before it drops you from a great height. So he said there's something in the wind, calls your name, and then grabs you from behind and takes you up, 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 and then drops you from a very great height. And he says it's a Native American legend story. So the hunter goes back hunting. He goes back to look for Defago. So he set up camp and made a fire. So he, once again, made a tent so he could sleep, and he had a fire, and he went hunting. And one night, he saw a man come towards him by the fire. And there was something familiar about this man. Defago, the hunter said, "Is that you?" There was no answer from the stranger. "It is you, isn't it?" Still, there was no answer. The hunter started to think that maybe there was something wrong. Maybe this man needed some kind of help. "Are you all right?" the hunter asked. "Do you need anything?" The man gave no answer. "Please, Defago, tell me what happened. At least let me know enough so that I can know how to help you." So he thinks it's Defago. He's not sure because the man has a hood. He has a hood and he can't see his face. And he asks him questions. "Oh, are you okay? How are you?" But the stranger is silent. "I saw the Wendigo," Defago whispered, his voice low and breathless. The hunter wanted to reach out and pull back the hood on the cloak the stranger wore. Still not completely sure that the man he was speaking to was really Defago. His arm went out and he gripped the hood, pulling it away from the man's face. What the hunter saw terrified him, and he screamed in horror. Underneath the cloak was a pile of ashes in the shape of a man. The cloak, when he pulled it back, there was nobody, just a cloak. So the Wendigo took Defago and burned him, and then dropped him. And Defago, his spirit, his soul, came back as